Have you ever wondered how love can transform even the coldest hearts? In today's story, we dive into a breathtaking journey of passion, redemption, and the power of partnership. Meet Nathaniel Blake, a ruthless CEO who thought he had it all: wealth, power, and control, until he crossed paths with Claire Bennett, a woman whose vision and compassion would turn his world upside down. From boardroom battles to heartfelt confessions, their love story is one of resilience, hope, and the kind of connection that changes lives forever. Stay tuned, because this is more than just a romance. It's a story about building a future together, one brick at a time. Nathaniel Blake stood in his glass-walled office on the 50th floor of the Blake Tower, the headquarters of his billion-dollar real estate empire in the heart of Chicago. The city stretched out before him, a sprawling maze of lights and skyscrapers, but to him it was just another view. The world below bustled with life, yet Nathaniel felt none of it. He was a man who had everything: wealth, power, and influence, but nothing that truly mattered. At 38, Nathaniel was the youngest CEO to ever lead Blake Enterprises, a company he had built from the ground up. His journey to the top was nothing short of extraordinary. Born into a working-class family in Detroit, he had clawed his way out of poverty with sheer determination and an unrelenting work ethic. By the time he was 30, he had turned a small real estate startup into a global powerhouse, specializing in luxury developments and high-end commercial properties. But success came at a cost. Nathaniel had earned the nickname the Ice King in the business world, a title that reflected his cold, calculated demeanor. He was known for his ruthless decision-making, his ability to close deals without a hint of emotion, and his refusal to let anyone get too close. To his employees, he was a brilliant but distant leader. To his competitors, he was a force to be reckoned with. And to himself, he was alone. Nathaniel's personal life was a void he rarely acknowledged. He had no close friends, no family he kept in touch with, and no one waiting for him at home. His penthouse apartment, though impeccably designed, felt more like a showroom than a place to live. The only sounds that greeted him at the end of each day were the hum of the city below and the occasional clink of ice in his glass of scotch. Tonight was no different. As he stared out at the city, his mind drifted to the meeting scheduled for the next morning. It was a high-stakes negotiation with a small but promising startup called Greenhaven, a company specializing in sustainable housing solutions. The project was unlike anything Blake Enterprises had ever pursued. It wasn't about luxury or profit margins. It was about creating affordable, eco-friendly homes for underserved communities. Nathaniel had initially dismissed the idea when his team proposed it. Affordable housing wasn't his market, and the potential profits were negligible compared to his usual ventures. But something about the project had intrigued him. Perhaps it was the challenge of stepping into uncharted territory, or maybe it was the passion of Greenhaven's founder, Claire Bennett, that had caught his attention. Claire Bennett. The name lingered in his mind longer than he expected. He had read her profile in preparation for the meeting. A 32-year-old entrepreneur from Colorado, Claire had founded Greenhaven with the goal of making sustainable housing accessible to everyone. Her company was small, but her vision was bold, and her track record was impressive. She had managed to secure funding from several major investors and had already completed a handful of successful projects in rural areas. Nathaniel couldn't help but feel a flicker of curiosity about the woman behind the company. Her approach was the polar opposite of his own. While he focused on maximizing profits and dominating markets, she seemed driven by a genuine desire to make a difference. It was a mindset he had long abandoned, if he had ever possessed it at all. As the clock struck midnight, Nathaniel turned away from the window and walked to his desk. The file on Greenhaven lay open, filled with financial projections, architectural plans, and notes from his team. He skimmed through the documents one last time, his sharp mind already formulating strategies for the negotiation. But as he closed the file and prepared to leave, a thought stopped him in his tracks. For the first time in years, he felt a twinge of something unfamiliar: anticipation. It wasn't just about the deal or the potential partnership. It was about meeting Claire Bennett, the woman who had somehow managed to spark his interest before they had even exchanged a word. Nathaniel shook his head, dismissing the thought as quickly as it had come. He was a businessman, not a dreamer. Tomorrow's meeting was just another step in his relentless pursuit of success. Or, so he told himself. As he stepped into the elevator and descended into the quiet night, the city lights blurred into a haze. Nathaniel Blake had no idea that his carefully constructed world was about to be turned upside down. The conference room on the 30th floor of Blake Tower was a stark contrast to the warmth of the morning sun streaming through the windows. The space was sleek and modern, with a long glass table at its center and a panoramic view of Chicago's skyline. Nathaniel Blake sat at the head of the table, his expression as unreadable as ever. His team of executives flanked him, each armed with laptops and stacks of documents. Across from them sat Claire Bennett, the founder and CEO of Greenhaven. She was nothing like Nathaniel had expected. Claire was dressed simply but elegantly, in a navy blazer and a white blouse. Her auburn hair was tied back in a loose ponytail, and her hazel eyes sparkled with a mix of determination and warmth. She didn't carry the air of someone intimidated by the grandeur of Blake Enterprises or the imposing figure of Nathaniel himself. Instead, she exuded a quiet confidence, the kind that came from knowing exactly who she was and what she stood for. Nathaniel's sharp gaze studied her as she introduced herself and her team. Her voice was steady, her words carefully chosen, but there was a passion behind them that was impossible to ignore. She spoke about Greenhaven's mission to create sustainable, affordable housing for families in need, emphasizing the importance of balancing environmental responsibility with social impact. "This isn't just about building homes," Claire said, her eyes locking with Nathaniel's. "It's about building hope. It's about giving people a chance to live with dignity in a place they can truly call their own." Nathaniel leaned back in his chair, his fingers steepled under his chin. He had heard countless pitches in his career, but there was something different about Claire. She wasn't just selling an idea. She believed in it with every fiber of her being. When it was his turn to speak, Nathaniel's tone was measured, almost clinical. "Your vision is admirable, Ms. Bennett," he said, his deep voice filling the room. "But admirable doesn't always mean practical. The margins on a project like this are razor thin, and the risks are significant. What makes you think Greenhaven can deliver on a scale that would justify our investment?" Claire didn't flinch. Instead, she leaned forward slightly, her hands resting on the table. "Because we've done it before," she replied, her voice firm but not defensive. "We've completed 3 projects in rural Colorado, each one under budget and ahead of schedule, and because I believe that with the right partners we can scale this model to reach even more communities. This isn't just a business opportunity, Mr. Blake. It's a chance to make a real difference." The room fell silent for a moment. Nathaniel's team exchanged glances, unsure of how their boss would respond. Nathaniel himself remained still, his piercing blue eyes fixed on Claire. Finally, he spoke. "You're asking us to take a leap of faith," he said. "That's not something I do lightly." Claire met his gaze without hesitation. "Sometimes, Mr. Blake, the greatest rewards come from the greatest risks." The tension in the room was palpable, but there was no hostility in it. If anything, it felt like a battle of wills, a clash between 2 people who were equally determined, but fundamentally different in their approach to the world. As the meeting continued, Nathaniel found himself paying less attention to the numbers and more to the woman presenting them. Claire's passion was infectious, and her ability to articulate her vision with such clarity and conviction was nothing short of impressive. She wasn't just a dreamer, she was a doer, someone who had turned her ideals into tangible results. By the time the meeting ended, Nathaniel was left with a decision to make. His instincts told him to walk away, to stick to the tried and true strategies that had made him successful, but there was a part of him, a small, quiet part, that was intrigued by the possibility of something different. As Claire and her team gathered their materials and prepared to leave, Nathaniel stood and extended his hand. "Thank you for your time, Miss Bennet," he said, his voice as composed as ever. Claire shook his hand, her grip firm but not forceful. "Thank you for listening, Mr. Blake," she replied. "I hope you'll consider what we've discussed." Nathaniel nodded, but as he watched her walk out of the room, he couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't the last time their paths would cross. Later that evening, Nathaniel found himself replaying the meeting in his mind. He rarely dwelled on business discussions once they were over, but something about Claire had left an impression on him. It wasn't just her ideas or her passion. It was her. He thought about the way her eyes lit up when she talked about her projects, the way her voice softened when she spoke about the families she wanted to help. There was a sincerity to her that was both refreshing and disarming, a stark contrast to the calculated personas he was used to dealing with. For the first time in years, Nathaniel felt a flicker of something he couldn't quite name. It wasn't attraction, though Claire was undeniably beautiful. It was something deeper, something that stirred in the corners of his guarded heart. He shook his head, trying to push the thought away. Claire Bennet was a business partner, nothing more. Whatever he was feeling, curiosity, admiration, or something else entirely, had no place in his world. But as he stared out at the city from his penthouse that night, Nathaniel couldn't help but wonder if Claire Bennet was about to become more than just a name in a file. Nathaniel Blake wasn't a man who second-guessed himself. His decisions were always swift, calculated, and final. But in the days following his meeting with Claire Bennet, he found himself hesitating. The proposal from Greenhaven lingered in his mind, not because of the numbers or the risks, but because of her. Claire had been unlike anyone he'd ever met in the business world. She wasn't driven by profit margins or market dominance. She was driven by something far more elusive, hope. And for reasons he couldn't quite explain, Nathaniel found himself wanting to understand her better. A week later, Nathaniel's assistant handed him an envelope. It was an invitation to a community event hosted by Greenhaven. The event was being held at one of their completed housing projects on the outskirts of Chicago. Nathaniel almost dismissed it. He didn't attend events like this. He didn't have the time nor the inclination. But as he stared at the invitation, he felt a strange pull. Against his better judgment, he decided to go. When he arrived at the site, Nathaniel was struck by how different it was from the world he was used to. The neighborhood was modest but vibrant, filled with families and children playing in the streets. The houses, though simple, were beautifully designed, with solar panels on the roofs and gardens in the front yards. Claire was there, of course, moving through the crowd with an ease and warmth that Nathaniel envied. She greeted him with a smile that was equal parts surprise and delight. "I didn't think you'd come," she said, her voice light but sincere. "I don't usually attend these kinds of events," Nathaniel admitted, his tone as reserved as ever. "But I wanted to see your work firsthand." Claire's smile widened. "Well, I'm glad you're here. Come on, let me show you around." As Claire led him through the neighborhood, Nathaniel found himself seeing a side of life he had long forgotten. She introduced him to families who had moved into the homes, each with their own story of struggle and resilience. One woman, a single mother of two, spoke about how having a stable home had allowed her to find a better job and provide for her children. A retired veteran shared how the community had given him a sense of purpose after years of feeling lost. Nathaniel listened, his usual detachment giving way to something he hadn't felt in years: empathy. He saw the pride in their eyes, the gratitude in their voices, and he realized that these homes weren't just buildings. They were lifelines. Claire watched him closely, noting the subtle changes in his expression. For the first time, she saw cracks in the armor of the man known as the Ice King. "You see?" she said softly as they stood on the edge of the neighborhood, looking out at the rows of houses. "This is what it's all about. It's not just about the numbers or the deals. It's about people. It's about giving them a chance to build a better life." Nathaniel didn't respond immediately. He was too busy grappling with the unfamiliar emotions stirring inside him. Finally, he said, "You're different, Claire." Most people in this business only care about what they can take. You care about what you can give. Claire turned to him, her eyes searching his. And what about you, Nathaniel? What do you care about? The question caught him off guard. He opened his mouth to answer, but no words came. For the first time in his life, Nathaniel Blake didn't know what to say. As the evening wore on, the event transitioned into a casual dinner under string lights. Nathaniel found himself sitting at a table with Claire, the two of them talking long after most of the guests had left. Their conversation drifted from business to more personal topics. Claire spoke about her childhood in Colorado, growing up in a small town where everyone knew each other. She shared how her parents had struggled to keep a roof over their heads, and how that experience had inspired her to start Greenhaven. Nathaniel, in turn, found himself opening up in a way he hadn't in years. He told her about his upbringing in Detroit, about the long hours his parents had worked to provide for him, and about the sacrifices he had made to build his empire. "It sounds like you've achieved everything you set out to do," Claire said, her voice gentle. "But are you happy?" The question hung in the air between them. Nathaniel looked away, his jaw tightening. "Happiness is complicated," he said finally. Claire didn't press him, but her silence spoke volumes. For the first time, Nathaniel felt the weight of his own choices, the emptiness of a life spent chasing success at the expense of everything else. In the weeks that followed, Nathaniel and Claire began working more closely on the Greenhaven project. Their professional relationship deepened, but so did their personal connection. Nathaniel found himself drawn to Claire's optimism and resilience. She had a way of seeing the good in people, of finding solutions where others saw only problems. And Claire, in turn, was intrigued by the man behind the icy exterior. She saw glimpses of vulnerability in Nathaniel, moments when his guard slipped and his true self shone through. One evening, after a long day of meetings, Nathaniel invited Claire to dinner. It wasn't a business dinner, it was something more personal. They went to a quiet restaurant on the edge of the city, far from the prying eyes of the media. Over the course of the meal, their conversation grew more intimate. They talked about their fears, their dreams, and the things that kept them awake at night. Nathaniel confessed that he often felt like an outsider in his own life, disconnected from the people around him. Claire reached across the table and placed her hand over his. "You don't have to do it alone, Nathaniel," she said softly. "You don't have to carry the weight of the world on your shoulders." Her words hit him harder than he expected. For the first time in years, Nathaniel felt a glimmer of hope, a sense that maybe, just maybe, he didn't have to face life alone. As their relationship deepened, Nathaniel began to change. He started spending more time at Greenhaven's projects, getting to know the people and the communities they served. He even began to question some of his own business practices, wondering if there was a way to balance profit with purpose. But with change came challenges. Nathaniel's growing connection with Claire didn't go unnoticed by his board of directors, who began to question his priorities. And the media, always hungry for a story, started speculating about the nature of their relationship. Despite the obstacles, Nathaniel and Claire found solace in each other. Their bond was no longer just about business, it was about trust, understanding, and the possibility of something more. Nathaniel Blake had always been a man who thrived under pressure. Negotiations, boardroom battles, and high-stakes deals were his natural habitat, but the pressure he faced now was unlike anything he had ever experienced. It wasn't about numbers or contracts, it was about Claire Bennett and the growing storm that threatened to tear them apart. The first signs of trouble came during a quarterly board meeting. Nathaniel had presented the Greenhaven project as a strategic partnership, emphasizing its potential to expand Blake Enterprises into the sustainable housing market. But the response from the board was far from enthusiastic. "This project is a distraction," one board member said, his tone sharp. "We're a luxury real estate company, not a charity. The margins on this are laughable, and the risks are unacceptable." Another member chimed in. "Nathaniel, we've trusted your judgment for years, but this feels personal. Are you sure your involvement with Miss Bennet isn't clouding your decision-making?" The room fell silent. Nathaniel's jaw tightened, but he kept his composure. "This project is an opportunity to diversify our portfolio and position ourselves as leaders in sustainable development," he said firmly. "It's not about personal feelings, it's about vision." But the murmurs of dissent continued, and Nathaniel knew that his authority was being questioned. For the first time in his career, he felt the weight of doubt from the people who had always supported him. As if the board's skepticism wasn't enough, the media soon added fuel to the fire. A prominent business magazine published an article speculating about Nathaniel's relationship with Claire, complete with photos of the two of them at Greenhaven events. The headline read, "The Ice King's soft spot. Is Nathaniel Blake's new partnership driven by business or love?" The article painted Claire as a manipulative entrepreneur, using her charm to influence Nathaniel, while portraying him as a man blinded by emotion. The story spread like wildfire, and soon, every major outlet was running with the narrative. Claire was devastated. She had worked tirelessly to build Greenhaven's reputation, and now her integrity was being called into question. "I can't believe this is happening," she said, her voice trembling as she sat across from Nathaniel in his office. "They're making it seem like I'm using you, like everything I've worked for is just—" Nathaniel reached for her hand, his expression uncharacteristically soft. "We'll get through this," he said. "I'll issue a statement, set the record straight." But Claire pulled her hand away, her eyes filled with frustration. "It's not that simple, Nathaniel. This isn't just about you or me, it's about the people we're trying to help. If Greenhaven loses its credibility, those families lose their chance at a better life." Her words hit him like a punch to the gut. For the first time, Nathaniel realized that his presence in Claire's world might be doing more harm than good. The tension between them came to a head during a late-night argument at Claire's office. She had been working tirelessly to counter the negative press, while Nathaniel had been trying to manage the fallout within his company. "You don't understand what this is doing to me," Claire said, her voice rising. "Every time I turn on the news, there's another story about how I'm some gold digger who's using you to get ahead. Do you know how humiliating that is?" Nathaniel's own frustration boiled over. "And do you think this is easy for me?" he shot back. "I've spent my entire career building a reputation, and now my own board is questioning my judgment because of this project. Because of us." Claire's eyes flashed with anger. "So what are you saying, Nathaniel, that I'm not worth the trouble?" The room fell silent, the weight of her words hanging between them. Nathaniel took a step back, running a hand through his hair. "That's not what I meant," he said quietly. "But maybe this isn't the right time for us." Claire's heart sank. She had known this moment might come, but hearing the words still felt like a knife to the chest. "If that's how you feel," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "then maybe you're right." Nathaniel wanted to say something, to take the words back, but the look in Claire's eyes stopped him. She turned away, and he knew he had lost her, at least for now. In the days that followed, Nathaniel threw himself into his work, trying to bury the pain of their separation. But no matter how many deals he closed or meetings he attended, he couldn't shake the emptiness that had settled in his chest. Claire, meanwhile, focused on protecting Greenhaven. She distanced herself from Nathaniel in the media frenzy, determined to prove that her work could stand on its own. But late at night, when the world was quiet, she couldn't help but think about him, the man who had challenged her, supported her, and in the end, let her go. The breaking point came during a board meeting at Blake Enterprises. Nathaniel was presenting a new luxury development project when one of the board members interrupted him. "Mr. Blake, with all due respect, we need to address the elephant in the room," the man said. "Your involvement with Greenhaven has caused significant damage to this company's reputation. We believe it's time to cut ties with the project, and with Miss Bennet." Nathaniel froze. For a moment, he considered agreeing, taking the easy way out. But then he thought about Claire, her passion, her determination, and the lives she was fighting to change. "No," he said, his voice steady but firm. "We're not cutting ties with Greenhaven. In fact, I'm doubling our investment in the project." The room erupted in protests, but Nathaniel didn't waver. "This isn't just about business," he continued. "It's about doing what's right. And if any of you have a problem with that, you're welcome to resign." The board members exchanged stunned glances, but none of them dared to challenge him further. For the first time in his career, Nathaniel had made a decision not based on profit, but on principle. That evening, Nathaniel drove to Greenhaven's office. Claire was there, working late as usual. She looked up in surprise when he walked in, her expression guarded. "What are you doing here?" she asked. "I made a mistake," Nathaniel said, his voice raw with emotion. "I let my fear get in the way of what really matters." "You were right, Claire. This isn't just about us. It's about the people we're trying to help, and I'm not going to let anyone, including myself, stand in the way of that." Claire's eyes softened, but she didn't say anything. Nathaniel took a step closer. "I'm sorry," he said. "For everything. For not fighting harder for you, for us. I don't want to lose you, Claire. Not again." For a moment, Claire just looked at him, her heart torn between hope and hesitation. But then, slowly, she smiled. "You're a stubborn man, Nathaniel Blake," she said. "But I guess I can work with that." Nathaniel Blake had always been a man of control. Every decision, every move, every word was calculated to perfection. But as he stood in the middle of Greenhaven's latest construction site, surrounded by unfinished homes and the hum of machinery, he realized that for the first time in his life, he was about to take a leap of faith. The Greenhaven project had reached a critical juncture. Despite Nathaniel's renewed commitment and doubled investment, the project faced mounting challenges. The media scrutiny hadn't subsided, and several key investors were threatening to pull out, citing the controversy surrounding Nathaniel and Claire's partnership. To save the project, Nathaniel and Claire decided to host a high-profile presentation for potential investors, community leaders, and the press. The goal was to showcase the progress they had made and the impact the project could have on underserved communities. The event was held at the construction site, with rows of chairs set up in front of a partially completed home. Nathaniel stood backstage, adjusting his tie as he prepared to address the crowd. Public speaking had never fazed him before, but this time was different. This time it wasn't just his reputation on the line, it was Claire's, and the future of everything she had worked for. Claire appeared beside him, her presence grounding him in a way he couldn't explain. She was dressed simply, in a white blouse and jeans, but to Nathaniel, she looked more powerful than anyone in the crowd. "You ready?" she asked, her voice steady but soft. Nathaniel nodded, his usual confidence tempered by something deeper. "I am. And Claire, thank you for not giving up on me." Claire smiled, her eyes shining with a mix of pride and affection. "You're worth fighting for, Nathaniel. Now let's go show them why this project is worth fighting for too." Nathaniel stepped onto the makeshift stage, his tall frame commanding attention as the crowd fell silent. He began by addressing the controversy head-on, his voice calm but resolute. "I know there's been a lot of speculation about this project, about my involvement and about my relationship with Miss Bennett," he said, his piercing blue eyes scanning the audience. "So let me set the record straight. This isn't about profit margins or public image. This is about people. It's about creating opportunities for families who have been overlooked for far too long." He paused, letting his words sink in before continuing. "For years, I've built a career on luxury and exclusivity, but what I've learned from working with Claire and Greenhaven is that true success isn't measured by the size of your portfolio. It's measured by the impact you have on the lives of others." Nathaniel's voice softened as he glanced at Claire, who stood at the edge of the stage, her eyes locked on him. "This project has changed me. It's reminded me of why I started in this business in the first place, to build something that lasts, something that matters. and I'm asking all of you to join me in making that vision a reality." The crowd erupted into applause, but Nathaniel barely noticed. His focus was on Claire, whose expression was a mix of pride, relief, and something else, something that made his heart ache in the best possible way. As the event wound down, Nathaniel and Claire mingled with the attendees, answering questions and addressing concerns. By the end of the evening, several investors had pledged their support, and the project's future seemed secure. But for Nathaniel, the real victory came later, when he and Claire found themselves alone on the construction site. The sun had set, and the only light came from the string of bulbs strung across the scaffolding. Claire leaned against a wooden beam, her arms crossed as she looked out at the rows of unfinished homes. "You were incredible today," she said, her voice quiet but full of emotion. Nathaniel stepped closer, his hands in his pockets. "I couldn't have done it without you," he admitted. "You've changed the way I see the world, Claire, the way I see myself." She turned to face him, her hazel eyes searching his. "And what do you see now?" Nathaniel hesitated, the weight of his feelings pressing against his chest, but then, for the first time in years, he let his guard down completely. "I see a man who doesn't want to spend another day without you," he said, his voice raw with honesty. "I see a future that's bigger than just me. And I see you, Claire, always you." Claire's breath caught, her heart pounding as she took in his words. She had spent so long building walls around her own heart, afraid to let anyone in. But with Nathaniel, those walls had crumbled, brick by brick. She stepped closer, her hand reaching up to touch his face. "You're not the man I met in that boardroom," she said softly. "You're so much more." Nathaniel covered her hand with his thumb brushing against her skin. "That's because of you," he said. "You've made me better, Claire, and I don't want to lose you again." For a moment, they simply stood there, the world around them fading into the background, and then, slowly, Nathaniel leaned down, his lips capturing hers in a kiss that was both tender and full of promise. The kiss marked a turning point not just for their relationship, but for everything they had been fighting for. Together they had faced challenges that would have broken most people, but instead of tearing them apart, those challenges had brought them closer, forging a bond that was unshakable. As they pulled apart, Claire rested her forehead against Nathaniel's, a soft smile playing on her lips. "So, what happens now?" she asked. Nathaniel chuckled, his arms wrapping around her. "Now, we finish what we started, together." Claire nodded, her heart full for the first time in years. "Together," she echoed. And as they stood there, surrounded by the beginnings of a community that would soon be filled with life and laughter, Nathaniel and Claire knew that this was just the beginning of their story. The weeks following Nathaniel's heartfelt proposal were a whirlwind of activity. Between managing the rapid expansion of Greenhaven and planning their future together, Nathaniel and Claire found themselves busier than ever. Yet, amidst the chaos, their love only grew stronger, serving as the foundation for everything they were building, not just homes, but a life filled with purpose and meaning. The wedding was a reflection of everything Nathaniel and Claire stood for: simplicity, love, and community. Instead of a grand ballroom or a luxury estate, they chose to hold the ceremony at the very first Greenhaven community they had built together. The day was perfect, with clear blue skies and a gentle breeze carrying the scent of blooming flowers. The ceremony took place in the middle of the neighborhood park, surrounded by the families whose lives had been transformed by Greenhaven. Children played in the background, their laughter a reminder of the hope and joy that Nathaniel and Claire had worked so hard to create. Claire walked down the aisle in a simple yet elegant white dress, her hair adorned with wildflowers. Nathaniel, dressed in a tailored navy suit, couldn't take his eyes off her. As she approached, his usual composed demeanor gave way to a rare vulnerability, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. When they exchanged vows, there wasn't a dry eye in the crowd. Nathaniel's voice trembled as he spoke, his words raw and heartfelt. "Claire, you've shown me what it means to truly live, to care, and to love. You've changed me in ways I never thought possible, and I promise to spend the rest of my life proving that I'm worthy of you." Claire's voice was steady, but her eyes shone with emotion. "Nathaniel, you've taught me that even the most guarded hearts can find their way to love. Together, we've built something beautiful, not just homes, but a future. And I can't wait to keep building that future with you." As they kissed, the crowd erupted into cheers, and the children released a flurry of paper doves into the sky. It was a moment of pure joy, one that would be remembered not just by Nathaniel and Claire, but by everyone who had been touched by their journey. The wedding reception was unlike any other. Instead of a formal dinner, Nathaniel and Claire hosted a community barbecue, inviting not just their friends and family, but also the residents of Greenhaven. Long tables were set up under strings of twinkling lights, and the air was filled with the sound of music, laughter, and the smell of grilled food. Nathaniel, who had always been more comfortable in boardrooms than social gatherings, surprised everyone by rolling up his sleeves and helping serve food. Claire laughed as she watched him struggle to flip burgers, his usual confidence replaced by a charming awkwardness. "You're going to burn those," she teased, stepping in to help. Nathaniel grinned, his eyes sparkling with happiness. "Good thing I have you to save me." As the night went on, the couple danced under the stars, surrounded by the people whose lives they had changed. It was a celebration not just of their love, but of the community they had built together, a testament to the power of hope, resilience, and partnership. A few months after the wedding, Nathaniel and Claire returned to the first Greenhaven community for a special event. The residents had come together to organize a dedication ceremony, wanting to honor the couple for their unwavering commitment to the project. The ceremony took place in the community center, a building that had once been an abandoned warehouse but was now a vibrant hub of activity. The walls were adorned with photos of the families who had moved into the neighborhood, their smiles a testament to the impact of Greenhaven. One by one, residents stood up to share their stories. A single mother spoke about how moving into Greenhaven had given her children a safe place to grow up. An elderly couple talked about how the community had given them a sense of belonging after years of feeling isolated. But the most touching moment came when a young boy, no older than 8, approached the microphone. Clutching a handmade card, he looked up at Nathaniel and Claire with wide, earnest eyes. "Thank you for giving us a home," he said, his voice small but steady. "My mom says you're like superheroes, but I think you're just really nice people who care about us." The room erupted into applause, and Claire wiped away tears as she hugged the boy. Nathaniel, usually so composed, found himself at a loss for words. In that moment, he realized that all the challenges they had faced, the media scrutiny, the boardroom battles, the sleepless nights, had been worth it. As Greenhaven continued to grow, so did Nathaniel and Claire's vision. They began exploring new ways to expand their impact, from launching educational programs for residents to partnering with other organizations to replicate the Greenhaven model in other cities. But amidst their busy schedules, they always made time for each other. Whether it was a quiet dinner at home or a spontaneous weekend getaway, they never lost sight of what mattered most: their love and the life they were building together. One evening, as they sat on the porch of their own home, a modest but beautiful house in the heart of a Greenhaven community, Nathaniel turned to Claire, his expression thoughtful. "Do you ever think about how far we've come?" he asked. Claire smiled, resting her head on his shoulder. "All the time, but the best part is knowing that we're just getting started." Nathaniel nodded, his heart full. "Here's to the future," he said, raising his glass of wine. Claire clinked her glass against his, her eyes shining with love and determination. "To the future," she echoed. Years later, Nathaniel and Claire's story would become the stuff of legend. Their partnership had not only transformed the real estate industry, but had also inspired countless others to believe in the power of love, resilience, and the ability to create change. Their legacy lived on in the communities they had built, the lives they had touched, and the love they had shared, a love that had started as an unlikely partnership but had grown into something extraordinary. And as they stood hand in hand at the groundbreaking ceremony for Greenhaven's 50th community, surrounded by the laughter of children and the warmth of a thriving neighborhood, Nathaniel and Claire knew that their journey was far from over. Together, they would keep building not just homes, but a world filled with hope, love, and endless possibilities.